Formats, although they are highly commercialized television products, undoubtedly possess often great cultural significance. So say three leading scholars from top universities in the UK and Spain. What is it about television formats that fascinates audiences and scholars around the globe? Let's dive in and find out. In this episode of Shall We Check It Out, we'll be discussing Shaolin Heroes, an adventure reality format that just claimed the International Emmy Award for non-scripted entertainment. Created by a Danish label, the show throws 9 struggling celebrities into a life-changing quest to master the ancient discipline of Shaolin warrior monks. Under the guidance of 2 Shaolin masters, contestants face intense trials, testing their physical and mental boundaries. This year, Shaolin Heroes clinched the International Emmy, outshining global juggernauts like Big Brother, Love is Blind, and Masked Singer. What is so special about the show, and what is its cultural significance? I'll be unpacking all this with a fellow member of the International Academy of Television Arts and Sciences, Philip Kalin-Hajdu. Phil is a Canadian screenwriter, producer, and development executive with experience in independent feature films, TV formats, and interactive media. He has been nominated for Canadian Screen Awards twice as a producer, and he serves as the head of content and storytelling at a global format licensing and distribution company. In this role, he develops formats and factual series, writes and creates original content, and collaborates with a wide range of major broadcasters to grow the company's catalog. Today, he's beaming in from Glasgow, Scotland. Hello, Phil. Welcome.
Hey, thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
So, Glasgow, what brought you all the way to Glasgow from Canada?
Well, first of all, I love Glasgow, but they invited me to show my next film called Bury the Devil. It's a horror film directed by Adam O'Brien, and this is the second time that they've had us with a picture made by him. And so I feel like I'm back where I belong with whiskey and movie lovers.
So, what's your role in the film?
I'm the producer of the film. Yeah. So
Did
we
you
put it
write it
together.
too?
No, not this one. Not this one. This was written by 2 gentlemen in California, and they sent it up to Adam, and it was a great ride. We shot it in 6 days, so it was a one take, one shot kind of film. So it takes you through the 80 minutes of a possession of a young woman.
So, not a comedy.
But it depends on your perspective. It's like the tone is a bit on the fun side. It's not a very serious horror film. It's more tongue in cheek.
Because you said it's not your first time at Fright Fest, so this is what you normally produce in that genre, the horror genre?
Yeah, so most of the features that I produce are horror, not all. There's a couple of dramas, a couple of comedies, but most are horror. Um, I would say in the last 2, 3 years, they've exclusively been horror, but there are some dramas on the horizon for the next year or two.
So, when is the premiere of this new film?
Today, in just a few hours.
Oh, wow, congratulations.
Thank
Congratulations. I
thank
hope it
you,
goes well.
thank you. Yeah, the audiences here are fantastic, and what I love about Fright Fest in Glasgow is that it's attached to the Glasgow Film Festival. So it's a completely different audience than the Fright Fest London, where it's just Fright Fest. So we have a lot of different types of film goers, film lovers, people that are, here for the regular, if you want to call it, film festival that are exploring horror, as well as the horror fans. So last time we were here, it was sold out. I hope it's the same today. And the questions and answer periods are great. People are really engaged. It's the type of festival that I love.
Oh, fantastic, fantastic. So, and it's world premiere, isn't it?
This is the world premiere, yeah. Yeah, it's fun.
Exciting. I mean, how does the producer feel between? I know how a writer and director feels, but how does a producer feel before the film goes in front of the audience for the first time?
Really excited. I think probably similar feeling to a writer director with the added stress that you want to make sure that the writer director says things that, you know, help support the film and don't backfire. Uh, it's like the same feeling plus hoping that the PR training kicked in.
Okay, well, at least there was training, so that's already you're already a step ahead of the most of
Well,
the filmmakers. So.
this particular gentleman is good, so we're in good hands today.
Okay, good. Well, fingers crossed. I really hope it goes well. So, but we will be talking today about unscripted television and specifically unscripted formats. So, how did you get into this field?
So about 10 years ago, so I'd always worked in fiction development, writing, producing. And there is a company in Montreal called Media Ranch. It's an international format company, unscripted format distributor and creator. And about 10 years ago, we got in touch because they were looking for a writer to put a little bit of, I guess, some spin or some tone to the unscripted descriptions in their catalog and for some of the shows. Because sometimes in unscripted, it can get a bit, you know, not rudimentary or I don't know, lacks maybe some of the flair or the bells and whistles of how someone would approach a scripted synopsis, for example. So that was at the beginning, that was just it. I would come in, I would look at their log lines and their synopses and their pitch decks, and I would just kind of give it a little bit of a touch up for on the writing side. And we hit it off and we started to exchange ideas, started to create formats together. I started to get into the pitch rooms with them. And before I knew it, I was running the development there. And in the last 5 years, also the sales, especially on the US side.
So obviously, you got the hooked because you haven't left and you're still there, and
Yeah.
you've taken on bigger and bigger roles as the years went by. So what continues to fascinate you about unscripted television and unscripted formats in particular?
Um, uh, well, first of all, you're right. I love it very much. I think it is not only a fun, section of the film and television entertainment world. I think it's an important one. Whereas fiction strives to capture the human experience by creating, drama. These are real people. And even if it is a little bit scripted or especially in a format that follows all these rules and these recipes, you still can't get rid of the fact that they are real people. And even if manipulated, the humanity comes through, the representation of the times comes through. They are like cultural time capsules. And I especially love the adaptations because this idea that a format can be local and global at the same time, when you watch, any of them, Voice, Idol, or even what we're going to talk about today, it's you get the similarity and the familiarity, but you can definitely see the individuality come through. And I think it's important. I think it really can. I think formats do connect everyone. Um, it doesn't matter where you're from, that golden buzzer is going to make you feel a certain way. The elimination round of a competition show is going to make you feel a certain way. The tension of a social experiment is going to make you feel a certain way. And yeah, I love it. Absolutely.
So I know that part of your work or part of the responsibilities in your roles at this company is also to be a juror for the International Emmy Awards, and for most of the years that you judged the awards, you judged the category of non-scripted entertainment. So. And I know, how many shows do you usually have to watch per every year, let's say?
It's a good question. I felt like there were some years where we were watching 16, 20, even a little bit more. It depended on specifically which category of unscripted, but A lot, hours worth, definitely. Especially since I do watch like sometimes they send 2 episodes, and I watch them all, so it ends up being hours of watching.
Mhm. So, in the sea, in this ocean of unscripted television, how do you know which show is award worthy or which show will come on top or comes on top for you?
It's a great question. I think there's certain things that I judge similarly to fiction or to anything in, I guess, the arts. What moves you? You could watch a cooking show, even something as rudimentary. For example, if you go back to you know, a recipe or like a stand and stir kind of show where it's Julia Child standing behind a counter and cooking. It's not just Julia Child standing behind a counter and cooking. She's reaching you. It's about life. It's about her experience learning how to cook. It's about sharing that with you. It's about passion. I think I've watched the clip of her crying over a dessert like times. These things are universal. So that is number one. Do I feel something? Great. Then it becomes part of, the technical element. Is it fresh and new in the way that it's shot? Is it, does it feel really unscripted, or do the manipulations come to the surface and I'm not feeling like it's authentic, or I'm feeling that it's over written or over dramatized, where that humanity that we were just talking about is stripped away. Which is kind of funny, right? In fiction, you could write yourself into making it feel real, but if it's unscripted, if it's overwritten, it starts to feel less real. And that becomes this weird gray zone of you kind of feel this distance and you're not really into it. So originality, especially if it's an adaptation, a few people have asked, well, how do you judge an adaptation? Why would you look at, the Canadian, I'm from Montreal, Canada, so why would you look at a Canadian Idol differently than American Idol, for example? And the adaptation has to capture that local flavor. Uh, there's a lot of creativity and a lot of technique that go into an adaptation, and you don't want to feel it. You want to make it. It has to feel local, even though it's a universal or international sensation, even for something like Voice or Idol. So those are all kind of the steps I go through. Um, I think it's hard. I, I don't know how the producers on or the director on those shows feel, or the broadcaster when they're submitting to the Emmys, but it must be incredibly difficult for them to choose which episode to submit. Because I'm always thinking like if you show the pilot, and I've seen a couple of pilots, which is weird to me because the pilots don't necessarily represent the entire season, but maybe they sent it in because it has this big dramatic or human moment. Um, for me, I would probably send something in the middle. Does the average show capture the audience? Um, yeah, I think that's sort of how I break it down. But feeling and quality, quality in the context of the country that it comes from. So I rarely, I rarely judge uh, elements that seem related to budget, right? There's no way that an adaptation or a format from a country with less money devoted to, television is going to look the same as, a big European or American show. So that I rarely judge. For me, it's not about the glitz and the glamour. It's about the substance.
Mhm. And I also think we have to probably emphasize that in international Emmys, when programs are submitted, adaptations are treated equally to the original. So really, you look, because I don't judge non-scripted entertainment. So, but you look at for example, a Mexican adaptation and a Canadian adaptation, or I don't know, Egyptian adaptation, as full-fledged programs, because in formats it's really about how you adapt it. I mean, you if you adapt it terribly, it can flop. Doesn't matter if it did very well in the UK, on the US, but if your adaptation is not good enough, then the format will not succeed in your territory. So I think it's important to stress that it's not just the format as we understand, like the original concept, but it's the adaptations also qualify on equal grounds.
It's an excellent point. Absolutely. I think that it's uh, very valuable that they put adaptations in the same category as originals because the local adaptation, no matter how huge or small, for those people in that country, that has to feel original. And that's key. Otherwise, it's not going to succeed. You can't watch the show made for your community, and a country is in many ways a community. And you can't watch it for your community and it feels like it was made for someone somewhere else. It just doesn't make sense. So I think it's great that they do that. And I've heard some people question it. Well, how could, if somebody came up with this original idea and how could you compare it to, Big Brother that's been around for, 20 something or more years? And I don't think that's the right approach. I think that every adaptation needs to feel fresh and should go toe to toe with an original and vice versa. The impact has to be there. Otherwise, your original won't take off if it can't meet that, I guess, that criteria, and the adaptation would stop being adapted if it can't meet that criteria. So I, yeah, I firmly believe that it's the right approach.
Mm. So, for example, this year, Shaolin Heroes, the show that was submitted for an award was actually the original show that was developed in Denmark. And but it was up against adaptations of Masked Singer from Mexico, Love Is Blind Habibi, and then Big Brother Canada, which Big Brother is such a well-known franchise. It's a super format, and it's been around for years and years. But the Canadian adaptation was submitted for an award, and Shaolin Heroes Denmark won. So why do you think? Because it's a fresh format. I think it was released in 2025 in Denmark. Now it went to other territories. But why do you think it came on top? In the context of those big, very well-known shows.
For a few reasons. Well, first of all, thank you for introducing me to the show because as much as I do work in unscripted, there's always some things that fall through the cracks when there's so much to watch. And in this year's Emmys, it was the first time that they put me on another category, so I didn't see the unscripted this year. So I was thrilled because I love the show. I really, really love the show. And it did deserve to win. I don't think first of all, I think that the other nominees are excellent adaptations, and they deserve to be nominated. Um, the the what makes Shaolin shine um, is it is against the current, uh, and I think that freshness matters. So one would say, well, how is that fair? If the pacing of a Big Brother or the tone of a Masked Singer has to remain the same as part of the adaptation. And I would push back and say, well, it does, but every year these things grow and they evolve. They do have to, for sorry for the lack of a better word, but they do have to adapt to the times. And they do have to reflect the countries that they're in. So there are some places where, fast paced doesn't always work. There's places where slower TV is more popular. And I think that Shaolin found a balance between the the pacing people come to have expected with, getting, exciting centerpieces and movements and big dramatic moments, but the flow is contemplative. It's slower. It takes time for lush cinematography, gorgeous, gorgeous shots, and by the end of the episode, I realized that the form and the content are perfectly united. The aesthetic and the editing and the pacing match exactly the themes and the goals of the show and what the human characters are aiming to achieve. So that sense of centeredness, that sense of calm, that sense of athletic improvement, health improvement, all of it is united um, with the format points, the cinematography. Nothing feels gimmicky. Everything is intertwined. And when you have that, it's very rare for it really to be aligned in that way. It's a bit striking gold, genie in a bottle kind of moment. Um, and and B, when everything starts to feel similar around the world, something like that, which, as I said, is against the current, really pops. I was thrilled. I loved it. It was sometimes when you're watching these things, it feels like work, just because you're so used to it. And this did not feel like work. I was an audience member through and through.
Mm. It's interesting. I mean, a few interesting things. So first of all, non-scripted entertainment doesn't necessarily mean formats, right? So
Correct.
people or companies that submit their shows to International Emmy Awards, they don't have to submit a format. Uh, and when I started watching Shaolin Heroes, I felt, oh, so this is going to be this one show that is not a format. But then, the producers themselves pitch it as a format and they introduce it as a format, right? And now the fact that it's gone to 6 or 5 other territories shows that it is a format and it's being sold as a format. Why is it a format? Please, because
So no,
we will get into the nitty gritty later,
yeah.
but like at first, you just see like really uncomfortable close-ups of 9 very messed up people, and you're
It's so
you're
true.
oh, maybe it's gonna be this human story piece or something. So so why is it a format? It doesn't feel like a format from the very beginning.
Totally right. It doesn't, especially because um, it's especially because it's gorgeous. Like, you kind of float into it and you're like, as you said, it's like, oh, this is an exploration piece. Or, these are people trying, especially in this, culture today of health and wellness, where everywhere you turn, there's some form of self-improvement. At first, I agree with you. At first, I was like, oh, this is like a doc following these people trying to be better. They're celebrities in their country, and being a celebrity seems so vapid. They're going to make themselves, you know, more in touch with, with life and nature. Um, but then it quickly becomes clear, at least after the first few minutes, that the format, there is a recipe. And not only that, it has wonderful, unique selling points. So, clearly once you get into it, once you get past those introductions, there is a regiment to what the characters have to go through, right? There's the wake up, the exercise, the recipe of how the show unfolds, the increased difficulty of what they have to experience and go through, and it follows very much the real life format of martial arts, right? You start at a certain level, you have certain challenges, certain tasks, and as you get better, your life, or in this case, in the show, your position in the show improves. And that doesn't necessarily always have to be a competition. Your position within yourself, within your group, are you the most, you thought you were the most in shape, and you thought I love the dynamic of the ages here, that you come in and you're young and you think that the old guy is gonna fail, but you realize that you're nowhere near at the level that you need to be. And it's also mental stability too, mental strength. Um, so all of that fits into that element of, you know, order of things and format. But there are some special unique selling points. First of all, the way it is shot, even though it could lend itself to more exploration documentary, is it by the end of the episode, it shines. It really is part of that unique selling point. It's you are in the middle of nowhere in this palatial kind of training ground for the Shaolin monks and for their training and for their spiritual improvement. And you can tell that as the tensions mount or as the drama increase, so does that perspective. Yes, there's the typical drone shots, but the way that the characters are approached, how they're talking to each other, the influence of the master, for example. Do we see them first from afar and we're approaching with a sense of dread as the guys are coming to train, or do we start with them from behind? The sense of mystery. And then as the characters discover, they turn around and we as the audience discover. Those are all very much built into what would be the show's Bible of how to shoot it and how it should feel and how it should look. But then there are classic format elements that are turned on its head. We've been used to for the last billion years of formats of the testimonial or the diary or how you feel. This show knocks that, on its back. They're actually writing in real paper and pen diaries. Now, that is an amazing, unique selling point. This idea that if you're going to go back to your roots and you're going to put your phone down and you're not going to have technology, that distance created between the camera and the character, where they're not breaking the fourth wall and they're not talking to us, but they have to go back to writing, that fits so beautifully into the message of the show and into the themes. That is a perfect example of a format point and a unique selling point that marries wonderfully with what you're trying to um, get the audience to feel, but also what you're trying to get the characters to feel. There's a connection between what our audience is going through and what the characters are going through. I love it. I love the diary. Um, of course, there's the format element of they have to live together, and how they're matched and how they talk about each other. The show beautifully edits in the mental change as well as and the emotional change as well as the physical change. These people, and we're told, I mean, I don't know them just based on my region, but we're told that they're celebrities or that they're well known within certain circles, and they
They're struggling celebrities. I think that's very
fair,
important. They're
fair,
struggling celebrities.
fair.
And you actually can pick up on that right from the very
Yes,
first seconds of
yes,
the show, the struggle part,
yeah,
of what's probably a former celebrity. Like it's
yeah.
hard to tell, without the cultural context. But yeah, struggling celebrities. Okay.
Fair, fair, fair. I
I think
guess
it's an
what we,
important format point, though, don't
yeah,
you? They're
yes,
not
it
like
is.
existing celebrities in their peak. They're struggling celebrities.
Yeah, I guess, like, I get what would be the equivalent for us here? Like, I guess I'm a celebrity, get me out of here level celebrity, kind of like they're not starring in the next big TV show or the next movie, or they're not hosting like the Late Show, but they're known, but as you said, struggling, or I mean, in North America, I know you call it like the D list or something, like they're, which is not very nice, but
That's
it kind of,
harsh.
yeah,
That's like very harsh.
it's kind of,
I
it's
haven't heard of a C-lister, but D-lister is like, one level below.
But as you said, culturally, I don't know. They certainly look great. I mean, they certainly cast very TV ready looking people. But you're right. The struggle is important because they're not only uh, the not only having to get to a better place in their career, but as a person. This is to bring them back to um, uh, what matters in life, I guess, which should help them get back to their job and put away all their insecurities or worries. And that's when you shine, right? That's when you do become your best self. And then I guess for celebrities, similarly, that's when they're at their peak, is when they're no longer looking over their shoulder. They're no longer worried, although maybe they always are, and to some degree. But the the beauty of this show is, even as they're judging themselves, to your point, they are struggling. Um, they are judging each other. There are very interesting lines of dialogue that they've kept in the show on purpose, where you can hear the judgment, you can hear the slight um, desire to put themselves ahead and to put someone else down. Um, there are uh, judgments on race, there are judgments on class, there are judgments of level of celebrity, there are judgments on sex, um, on age, and it's very subtle, which makes it beautifully done because it really does reflect the microaggressions. Sorry to use a trendy term, but there are, it really does reflect the microaggressions that exist in every culture. And I thought that was brilliant. So to have that play out in a way that is subtle, but intertwined within the fabric of what makes the show work, I thought was brilliant. In less adept hands, uh, that would have been cheap testimonials, you know, on the nose, almost bad writing, um, and this lets the humanity shine through. Uh, uh, I thought it was, I thought it was great.
Mm. So yeah, so really what we're talking about here is format points, right? And
Yeah,
an important format point is casting, so they cast struggling celebrities, and that's in their summary, that's in their pitch, in their log line, that the celebrities have to be struggling, yeah, and we have to see it immediately, when they introduce them. And then the masters, because also another thing in the pitch, they say the trials that the celebrities are going to go through are going to test mental and physical boundaries. And I always feel like the two masters, they represent, one of them is there with a function to test mental boundaries, and the other one is with a function to test physical boundaries, and they are very different masters,
yeah,
right? Did you get that? Like, I really love the casting of the masters, or the
absolutely.
the gurus.
Yeah, I think the masters are a huge format point, and 100%. You really do get the sense that they are there to serve two different parts of the growth of the characters, and I mean growth is the central theme of the show. Betterment, and they, they're both very intimidating. I got nervous, like I was like, oh my God, I can't. They They do. They made me want to go back to the gym. But but the you're 100% right. And I think that the casting element is key, and understanding that balance between um I I haven't seen the deck and I haven't seen the Bible, but if there isn't uh, let me rephrase, even without having seen the deck or the Bible, it feels like there is a paragraph on what it means to struggle and all those levels of struggle. And even if it's not said like that, like in a dictionary sense, you do get a feeling that this format is very much about that tension, that internal tension. And those masters represent both sides of that coin. And what is fascinating about the show is that we all quickly associate physical struggle with something that's very visual and very entertaining, right? It is the boot camp in the army. It is the lose weight show. It is the any element of where you see people huffing and puffing and sweating, and you as an audience are going like, either you're fit and you're like, yeah, go go go, or you're like them and you're like me and you're like, oh damn it, I really have to stop eating bacon. But the
You're not in
the
the right country for that, by the way. You're in
no, I am
Scotland. Like,
not. No, I'm not.
you're not the timing for your new health regime couldn't be worse.
It could not be worse. Yeah, tell that to my massive plate last night. But the mental part, and what's interesting about this show is, how do you visualize? How do you incorporate format points, um, and an aesthetic that makes mental growth entertaining, tangible, exciting. And we talked about the diary where you get the feedback from the characters, but to your point, the master that is less on the physical side, because there's, I mean, there's a physical element everywhere, but the master in charge of that mental and spiritual growth, um, is really that sort of window into these characters and what that triggers and what that opens up in how these characters speak about it but interact, and how they feel. It's it's excellent, and the fact that they cast it that way, uh, to your point earlier, it brings it from the perhaps documentary, uh, almost observing kind of show, observational, excuse me, kind of show, to a clear format.
And also coming back to another format point that you mentioned at the beginning of the episode, the setting, right? Because the setting is also a very important format point. And I think choosing the monastery, it creates the sense, I mean, that setting is so immediately humbling, you know. These people arrive there, and that's where we see them for the first time. They arrive at the monastery, and you can see there's nothing else needs to be done, you know, no external poking with a stick to make them, I don't know, just ask, oh, how do you feel about this, blah blah blah, because there's no host also. We have to mention that
Yeah,
the show
good point.
doesn't have a host, which
Yeah,
is very common in formats. So to have a host, this one doesn't. But you don't need a host, because the moment they enter that setting, you can see how humble they feel
yeah,
immediately.
yeah. It's a great point, and I had remarked to myself before talking to you that uh, a good comparison of how this achieves that, whereas other shows don't, is Survivor. So Survivor has these big sweeping drone shots of the jungle, for example, but it doesn't do the same thing as this show. You can have big, lush environments, but with Survivor, you still need that host to describe where you are, how this palm tree is different than any other palm tree, what kind of, what kind of challenges they're going to go through. Is this a place with like big snakes versus the other place that they went to, which is, poisonous frogs, or, hot water versus cold water. It is so challenge based, and don't get me wrong, Survivor's excellent, but it is so structured within the challenge that you still need someone to say, hey, this is where we are. Whereas, to your excellent point, you do not need any of that with Shaolin. It is instantly clear. Humbling, as you said, is a great word, but also isolation. Whereas Survivor, yeah, they're supposed to be isolated because they're surviving. If you've ever traveled to any place with palm trees, you're like, oh, okay, they're surviving, but isn't there a Club Med around the corner? That kind of feeling. And sometimes there isn't. Sometimes it is really dangerous. But in general, it is, there's an artificial sense of we are taking you and putting you somewhere that we have created to be isolated. Whereas with this show, a real monastery in real life evokes all of that. You know that if you're going to go to a monastery, are you going to a retreat? Are you going to become a monk? Are you going to do 2 weeks of silence? Are you going to improve your kung fu or whatever, martial art is there? Are you going to change your diet? It's instant. It's all there with one shot. It's beautiful. It is it's what audiovisual storytelling is supposed to be, right? It's silent era cinema. It is a movie. It is, you put on that camera, and within a frame, you know who, what, when, where, and why. Not only because the show is going to then tell you, but because of what you bring to it as an audience and your own sense of knowledge, or lack thereof. Both work in this case. Um, it is also uh, the I don't know if this is getting too much into the nitty-gritty, but the color palette uh, of the show, the both Survivor and this show have drone shots of trees. They are, if we do a side by side, the color, the the poppiness, the richness, the depth of color, shadow and light, um, just the use of fog, for example, altitude, all of it completely different. Whereas one is fast and almost garish in its color timing. Uh, this is nuanced. This is um, you feel the weight just through the color. And that to me was also quite daring because TV does look a certain way these days, right? Especially unscripted. There is a palette that we've become used to. Um, and this went against that grain. It dared to be it dared to be different, but it dared to be cinematic in the real sense of the word. Um, but yes, setting, monastery, you know, saying so much without saying anything at all. That is that's what makes this so good.
Yeah, and also back to the nuance. Yeah, we're not, I mean, unscripted television, or especially formats, unscripted formats, are not immediately associated with nuance. That's
Correct.
not that's not the first thing we think about when we hear, oh, unscripted format, The Voice, Survivor, oh, nuance, we're going to get a lot of nuance. No, but what nuance does in this show, because you're right, there's a lot of nuance. I don't know, it makes me really empathize with these people that I don't know. To me, they're not celebrities. They're struggling. I get that part. I don't know, celebrities, not celebrities. I have to believe the creators because I don't have the cultural context. But really, by the end of the episode, I start genuinely worrying for them. Because at the end of day one, at the end of the episode, they're like, oh, we did well. Yes, it was tough. We did well. We survived. Maybe we can do this. And knowing, I know a little bit about how these exercises feel. And I'm like, no, like tomorrow morning, you won't be able to get up from your bed. You will be aching all over your body. This is all coming crushing down on you. Now you
It's
might feel good, but tomorrow it's going to be hell. And I really, because we only watched one episode, when we judge the programs. So, at the end of this episode, I was really left with wanting more. I really wanted to know how this next day is going to feel for them, right? So I think that's also ultimately, it started very slow, and I thought, well, I don't know, it's going to be a short show, maybe, because, but then, by the end of the episode one, you really want to see what's going to happen next, even without the bells and whistles and the big dramatic tropes that used, for example, by Survivor.
100%. Uh, you just said so many interesting things because it ties into again that form and content and that how it really gels in this show. So first of all, you're totally right. There is no major cliffhanger at the end, right? There is nobody quite literally like in some of these other shows, will they, won't be eliminated, uh, thrown out, die, or like is anybody physically hanging from a cliff? And I think that what makes it interesting is the show relies on the audience um, understanding a bit of that experience. Because even if you've never been to a Shaolin temple or a monastery or whatever, you know what the attempt, no matter who you are, you know that an attempt at growth in any way, physical, mental, job, anything, marriage, relationships, it's work. And you know that even when you feel that something is going kind of easy and well, the shoe might drop. There's something that's going to happen next day. And anyone who, as you said, anyone who's ever even done a physical plank exercise or whatever, you know that the next day, it's not going to feel so good. But that pain is a different kind of pain. It's an exciting pain. It is a motivational pain. It's a pain. Yes, some people give up, but you also know that, especially in the context of a show, there is going to be the push to keep going. And then I want to, as an audience member, want to keep going. And to your point about the pacing change, it mirrors beautifully the experience of the characters. For them, it does start slow. It is trepidatious. They are wondering where they are and exploring and meeting each other, and those judgments. But as it moves and the pacing gets quicker, it also mirrors them having to go through the motions faster. Uh, oh my God, one of the best parts of the show was them realizing that there's no personal alarm and there's going to be a gong to wake them up, but they don't know when. We have all gone through that experience, whether it's to catch a flight the next day or to get to work for a different time or to bring a kid to school or whatever it is. There's that sense of not sleeping because you don't know when you're going to wake up. And that is a beautiful tension for the sense of drama of a show. Because when I was watching them go through that, again, just like at the end to your point about the cliffhanger and knowing that the next day you're going to want to watch more because you know what it's going to feel like the next day, that moment, even though it's short, that I was hooked. I was like, there's a show where I'm gonna I work in horror, right? That's horror. That is dread. That is tension. That is it's you know what? I don't even know anybody who worked on this show and I'm gushing as if I'm proud of it, you know? Like it's great. And but you're highlighting exactly why it works because it is so unbelievably relatable, even if you've never done anything close to it. Uh, you're hooked.
Mm. Yeah, and one more thing about growth. I mean, so many of the shows, just as much as Shaolin Heroes, focus on personal growth of the characters. And I mean, this show also, highlights personal growth of the characters. But what it also does, it shows how your personal growth is inseparable from your team's collective growth. So one of the most important piece of knowledge or advice that they take away from the physical exercise routine is that don't give up. Even if you cannot keep up with everything that the master shows you, maybe do it in smaller steps, maybe do it at a smaller scale. But the moment you give up, you set an example for the team that everyone else can give up. And then everyone else does start giving up, because they're like, oh, this guy is not doing this anymore, I'm not going to do that anymore, oh, maybe I feel tired too, so you give yourself this license to be tired or this license to give up, so I think it's really done beautiful, and it says a lot about how society works, because in our
Absolutely.
modern day society we're so focused on our personal growth and life coaching and whatnot, but very often we forget that our personal growth is not possible without the collective growth of our environment, family, community, a team, wherever we are, whatever we're part of. So I think that is probably the biggest culture. Like I talked in my intro about cultural significance of unscripted television. I think that's probably the biggest cultural significance of the show. How it very beautifully, not kind of very in a pushy way, but it shows that personal growth is impossible without the collective growth of the team.
100%.
So yeah, the show has sold to six or five territories, all in Europe. So that's my question to you, because you work with a lot of broadcasters in many countries and territories. Do you think the show has a chance in Asia? Because I can understand how for Westerner this is a revelational, or this is very relatable. Do you think Asian countries would find the show appealing?
Um, It's an excellent question because it is clear that the show relies on perhaps some cliche or rudimentary understanding of Western, how Westerners look towards Asian culture, right? So there's this idea of the Asian master or the Kung Fu master or the Shaolin master. It's in the title, you know. The It does come with a bit of that sense of, uh, I guess, uh, prejudice, maybe, for lack of a better word, or this, the idea in Western culture that the the martial arts, specifically martial arts from Asia, represent the best of humanity, right? They are, every movie from Western countries, from any Occidental sort of society, it's like the master is always Asian. I wonder how Asian culture would look at that, but I would bet that it could work for two reasons. Regardless of any cliches that appear on our end and or tropes uh, that are due to it being, a Western cast going to an Asian master. Uh, the fact of the matter is that these monasteries and Shaolin monks, they do come from that part of the world. That is just a fact. Whether or not we are depicting the master in the appropriate way um, is another story. In this, I would like to believe that because it's unscripted and because it comes not with a performance, but with a sense of consent from a true person who is offered to be in this show and to provide such a service not only to the cast but to the show, right? Let's remove the cast for a second. There's still a production, right? It still is somebody, a broadcaster paying for a show, a producer producing it, casting it, finding these people. There is a sense of a given, yes, they're being paid, obviously, but there is a sense of responsibility to do it properly, especially in 2026. Having experienced a bit of being in Asia and seeing cultural shifts over the years. Um, the 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 advancement of technology, the fact that youth and celebrity and is similar there. There are people still connected to their phones too much, people that are not exercising enough, people that are focused too much on their job, put a lot of in some of those countries, there's a tremendous amount of pressure on oneself to be, elite at their job or excellent within their community or this sense of social standing. Um, that I think that with some adaptation, which is key for any format anyway, perhaps getting rid of some of in fact, the Western tropes, right? The idea that a struggling Western celebrity is you know uh, lazy, out of shape, vain, all of that, you know shifting that part. I think it could work. Everybody everywhere needs some sense of healing and growth. So maybe it wouldn't be this instant, idea of a Scandinavian struggling celebrity is in awe of the, and I'm putting this in quotes, Asian master. It would be different. It would be an Asian cast who's not necessarily seeing this larger than life Asian master, but they're seeing someone from their society that has found out how to be centered. And that is relatable no matter where you're from. So I think with some adaptation and leaning less on the inherent tropes that Western society is used to, I think it could work.
Mhm. And I think that's the
Yeah.
strength of a good format,
Yeah.
right? That it can be it creates spaces. The format points, they create spaces for adaptation, even in very different, culturally very different territories. I've only got experience in Korea, of Korean culture as far as the Asian culture goes. And, what I noticed there is this obsession with the beauty routines. There's
Oh my
so
God,
much,
yes.
that people do to their faces and hair and other body parts, before they leave the house. And I think you would be stripped of that in the show in a monastery like this. So because you don't know when you're going to wake up, and you don't have the 3 hours for your beauty routine. You have to wake up and do your exercises, your meditations, and what's not. So that's already one thing that I can think of where you're just like stripped to who you are, but not only mentally, but literally, physically. No makeup, no lashes, no hair color, no time for any of that.
Yeah,
You have to accept yourself the way you are, because that's all you got in that setting. Yeah, and that's that didn't come through in Shaolin Heroes Denmark, because the Scandinavian culture is inherently for natural looks and natural body, and the barely anyone has dyed hair in the
yeah,
in the cast,
yeah.
and nobody is really worried about makeup, or oh, I didn't have time to apply my mascara. Nobody says
Right,
that line.
right.
So for Scandinavian culture, that doesn't really matter. But I think that could be an interesting format point and an interesting thing to watch in an Asian adaptation.
Absolutely.
And that's the strength of the format. I think that it does, regardless of Asia versus Western countries, or the biases and stereotypes that prevail in that space. I think it still creates opportunities for adaptations in Asia too.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see. We'll wait and see.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that there's definitely that the growth theme is universal.
In addition to developing formats and pitching them, and working with broadcasters in developing them, you also teach other people how to write and develop formats. And in about a month, we're going to start a scripted format incubator with you for Lithuanian creators who want to break into the international market of unscripted formats. Our incubator is called TV Form, but I know that you have those incubators. You run those in other countries too. So and you've been doing it for a few years now, so maybe you have already you will already know the answer to this question. So for someone who is new, who maybe saw a few formats on TV and think, oh, I want to be a part of this business. I heard it's $1 billion business. I want to be a part of it. What are the main things that they have to understand and know?
Well, first, yes, it is a multi-billion. I think last check it was a $6 or $7 billion business. So the first thing I would say is uh, true, but don't count on going home with $7 billion yourself. Someone is making the 7 billion. I just don't know who. But uh, I would say Shaolin is an excellent example of of how to learn about the business. It is what is recognizable and familiar while feeling fresh and different. As a creator, it is often the most frustrating thing in the world to go to a broadcaster or anyone that's financing, and they say to you, you know, I want something fresh and new. And then you do it, and they're like, no, but I want it to feel like this. And they're like, well, then it's not new. And then you have to realize that it's frustrating, but there's truth to it. Fresh and new still has to feel recognizable. And whether it's recognizable because you recognize it in another show, or you recognize it in yourself, which Shaolin does really well, or in your life, that is the key to a great format. Um, and if you're going to get into this business, and if you're going to choose of all of the things you can choose in television, if you're going to choose formats, it comes with the understanding of why recipes are important, um, but even more so how you could make a recipe your own. So you can watch Julia Child, and it can be the best cake ever, but you know that in your family and in your community, adding a little touch of cinnamon or rum makes it completely different, makes it yours, but it still looks like Julia Child's cake. Then if that's what you love, you're in the right place. And it takes a lot of you need to be ready to fail. It takes a lot of patience. Um, but the beauty of unscripted television and beauty of formats is that the nature of time moving forward, the nature of society evolving, the nature of of how even from one day to the next, the entire world can change means that there's always something to talk about. There's always a human condition adapting in real life to new times, and therefore that can be presented on television. And whether it's metaphorically through a game or some sort of competition structure, um, that sort of mirrors the tensions and and stuff in life, or through something experimental or bringing people joy and in a food show. All of it, um, all of it comes down to the same thing.
Everybody has big ideas. It's probably that's why they go into audiovisual industry or television, because they have all those big ideas in their heads that they want to communicate. But how do you do it? Like, where do you start?
Okay, well, I think it's three different levels in parallel. First is um, well, especially in these incubators, we talk about how to take the big idea and clarify it, how to take the big idea and communicate it. There's something called a log line, for example, and we put a lot of pressure on this concept that if you cannot tell me what your huge idea is in two lines or like it's you're probably not clear yourself on what it is, and it's going to be very hard to break it open and to structure it. So I think that on the creative level, we talk about um, matching the big theme, the big idea, the big philosophical element, and distilling it into action. So, you know, if it's a show about makeup or food or whatever, what are you trying to say? And sometimes it starts with the big, this is what I want to say, but I don't know how to say it. And the log line and the synopsis and the structural elements are very important to distill that. Then once you have what your idea is in a clear form, is there a recipe? Is it really a format? How do you know it's a format? Why is it a format? Let's go through those recognizable format beats. Of those format beats, for example, you write Survivor, arrive at the island, listen to what the challenges are, learn about the team. What does your team represent? What are the challenges? How do you get eliminated? All of those rules, fine. But what is unique about your show? What are the unique selling points that make it instantly recognizable? In the incubator, we talk a lot about the turning chair of the voice. What is your turning chair? Uh, for Shaolin, what is your handwritten diary or 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 monastery setting, for example? Um, but that also, that's the creative side. But in order to really achieve a goal out of this incubator and not just learn, I mean, learning is important, but if you actually want to sell a show, part of what we do is talk about being in this business. You have to build relationships. You have to meet your broadcaster. You have to ask what the broadcaster wants. You have to understand that the broadcaster is made up of human beings, right? Who are those humans? Do you relate to them? What do they like? What shows are they interested in? What does the broadcaster need? Um, how are shows sold? How are they distributed? You really have to commit yourself to understanding the industry. The problem with film and television is that because it's associated with sort of this sort of dream big kind of mentality, and everybody has ideas. You're kind of like you wake up and you're like, tomorrow I'm gonna make a movie about this, or I'm gonna make a television show about that. And true with modern technology and AI and all those things, it's a lot easier to do it, but to reach an audience is still quite difficult. And there's more to this and to formats than uploading it somewhere, right? There's a business here, and building those relationships and building that community and entering in the business is just as much a part of this path and this journey as to learning how to create. Um, I think those two things hand in hand are very important. And the third one is research, uh, especially in the world of unscripted. Your idea probably exists somewhere. Research, 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 watch, watch, watch. Do whatever it takes to consume as much as you can, starting within your own community, and then to the countries just around your community, and then to your continent, and then beyond, and really grow out from your center to know what's out there. And that's not necessarily, if your idea exists, it might not be a bad thing. Can you make it your own? Is there, and that goes beyond there's formal adaptation, right? Like, let's learn how to take a show that exists, get the rights to do so, and then adapt it. But there's nothing wrong with seeing that, if you saw Idol and then you created Voice and then you created Got Talent, or all of those things, they're all in the same world, right? Uh, but they're not copying each other. They understand the inherent similarity and the emotional similarity, and then they make it their own. So you have to have that desire and that skill as well. Um, and I would add one last thing, and I'm sure as someone who both creates and educates, Aista, you can agree that listening is also really important. If I had $1 for every time someone said, I have a great show, and then I respond as even not only as a professional in the field, but as an educator and say, you know what, that is interesting, but it exists here, here, and here, or teammates, classmates, fellow producers also have the same idea. Maybe you should change or shift, and you still say, no, I'm going to do it. We've all heard stories of people that like push and push and persevere and they're right, but 9 out of 10 times it it's not going to get made. So I would listen to the people that are around you that have gone through the pain already of rejection, and the joy of achievement, and work with them on that balance.
So two things really I think are the biggest value of those incubators from what I've heard you say. First of all, it's not these are not incubators for just self-development. These are incubators that have a goal of teaching you to make shows that can be sold. So it's not
Yes.
really just about expressing yourself. There's nothing wrong with that type of programs, but this is a professional incubator, and professionals, need to make a living, and to make a living, they need to sell their shows. So this is
Yeah.
the type of incubator where you teach how to make a show that sells. And the second, I think, important thing that makes this incubator important and unique is the community, right? You don't have to. Usually, you do it on your own. When you start, of course, when you're well off and you have a team, then you do it in a team. But at the beginning, at the very beginning of your journey, you usually do it on your own. This incubator provides you with a community that can serve you as a sounding board, and as advisors and consultants, and your test group, if you will, your focus group. So I think these are two very important things, and I'm really looking forward to us doing this again in April. It's not the first year we're doing this together. I'm going to drop a link to the registration form, in the somewhere here, and the last question of the episode is the standard question, because the podcast series is called "Shall We Check It Out?" So it's a question for the audience. After hearing all of what we said about the show, in this case, Shaolin Heroes Denmark. Would you want to check it out? And for you as a guest, would you recommend the show?
120 million%. I had not been this pleasantly surprised by a show in a very, very long time.
So not only to
Definitely.
your trainees who can learn, but also to a regular, like your family
Yes.
or your.
I already did. I already, yeah, as soon as I watched it, I let everyone I could find know about it. I thought it was a lot of fun. It made me want to do it. I wanted to put my phone away and put everything away and just go and find a monastery somewhere and just spend a few days bettering myself or exercising at least. I have a cousin that does silent retreats, and I always was like, "That's ridiculous! Like, why?" You know. And now that I see the show, even though it's not a silent retreat, I was like, "Oh, I get it now. This is beautiful. This is fun. Like, just disappear and just kind of be with nature and be with people that are have the same goals and you know, it looked like fun. It looked terrifying, but fun.
Okay, so yeah, so if you're convinced by Phil's pitch, then check it out, I guess. And Philip, thank you very much for your time,
Thank
and
you.
the best of luck with your world premiere tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. Me too. Thank you.